So it's so great to see all of you here today. Just wanted to, so thank you, Kirsten, for organizing this. I wanted to start off just by explaining a little bit about the foundation before I introduce our very special guest. So I started this foundation when my sister Louisa couldn't find the resources for ovarian cancer that she was looking for as an ovarian cancer patient. So one thing that was very important to her was that she wanted to meet and connect with anyone else who had ovarian cancer. And this is really where our Survivor Social started. We do the Survivor Social quarterly. It used to be in person, of course, and now it's over Zoom, which is amazing because we can reach more of you and no matter where you live. But it's something that's really special because it engages and connects survivors to survivors. And that was really important to my sister as one of the things as we started our foundation. We want you to have a community in our foundation that creates connections and friendship and support. So we're really excited to have today's special guest joining us. She's a fellow survivor as well. And I want to give you a little bit of background. So back in 2018, I did look up when I first got her email, and the subject line was, "Hi from a doc with ovarian cancer." So of course that immediately got my attention. When Dr. Ghofrany and I connected, we talked about her ideas, how she wanted to use her experience to reach many other women and share her journey. So we asked her to make a video that she could share, that we could share and spread awareness. So we wanted to put it on our channels and just get that word out there that even, a doctor, this can happen to anybody, right? So she made the video and it started out like a letter saying, "Dear Cancer." And we can send you the link too in the chat later, but some might have filled this letter or video with anger or frustration if they're writing a letter to Dear Cancer about their battle. But instead, she projects light, positivity, healing, wisdom, gratitude, and inspiration that is so incredibly powerful, especially to others who've been diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And that's what Dr. Ghofrany is all about. She's enlightening, inspiring, has impacted millions of lives through her fans and followers, patients, supporters, and now all of you. She's an obstetrician, gynecologist, mother, wife, advocate, ovarian cancer survivor, and all-around amazing lady. We've invited Dr. Ghofrany to have a casual chat about her experience as a doctor and survivor of ovarian cancer. And I have to mention, of course, like Kirsten did, but although we're having a talk from our doctor, she's not going to be giving any medical advice today, but there will be specific Q&A afterwards. You can use the chat during her talk, but we'll try to get to all of your questions before the end, and we'll also leave some room for sharing and connecting at the end. So now, without further ado, even with her statement necklaces and fabulous style, not only in her fashion sense, but in her charm and wit, we're thrilled to have joining us today, the incredible Dr. Shieva Ghofrany.
Pamela, thank you so much. Pamela and Kirsten, both of you, thank you. And I mean this genuinely. I forgot about sending you that email, and I laughed that I'm terrible with emails because I can never be succinct. I'm very verbose. I will speak really quickly because I have a lot to say. And so I'm sorry if I talk too fast, but to your point, when I said doctor with ovarian cancer, I think that there are so many avenues with which I could use my story. And I think if the one thing I can offer is hope, especially to women who don't have ovarian cancer, but fear getting it, I really want to use my ability to teach them how to find it. I really sit here in total humility when I speak to people who do have stage 3 or 4 ovarian cancer or recurrent ovarian cancer, because that is not something that I can fully understand. I say really frequently that I have experienced a ton of crap in my life. By the way, I'll also put in a disclaimer that I swear a lot. I've experienced a lot in my life, but I haven't experienced that. So I always want to be very cautious to say, I honor all of you. Any of you who are here having had stage 3 or 4 or recurrent ovarian cancer, please know that I don't want anything that I say to sound kind of pithy or gilding the lily or sugarcoating any of it, because cancer sucks no matter what for everyone. And it certainly is something that we should be able to do a better job at finding. So as I sit here speaking as someone who had it at stage 2, please know that I honor anyone who has it at later stages. And my hope is that we can prevent that for the future. But I never want my experience to seem to demean anything that anyone else has gone through, because people have gone through so much more. With that said, as Pamela said, I'm Shieva Ghofrany, and I've been an OB/GYN since 1999. I've been doing this for 23 years, and I've had a long journey of gynecological health issues, which I can say jokingly, but with all seriousness, it sounds like the who's who and what's what of gynecology. starting with, I've always battled with my weight and ended up doing bariatric surgery, which I consider to be a very female issue, right? To battle with our weight. I ended up having 6 miscarriages in my journey to become a mother. When I finally got pregnant, my first child actually had an intrauterine stroke, though he is a healthy 18-year-old with a lot of quirks, but he just came home from college last night. So he's actually doing well. And then my second child ended up having a club foot, which took 4 years to repair. So this was the point in my like mid to late 30s where I kind of joked, okay, whatever the higher power is, I've kind of gone through a lot. I get it. I understand. Like, I know you're not afflicting me. These are just things that happen, but I've kind of gone through enough to relate to my patients. You don't need to keep reminding me, because I always joke that I don't think anyone afflicts us with these things. I'll touch upon that after. But every time I've gone through something, I thought, okay, well, this helps me relate to my patients. I know what it's like to have a miscarriage. I know what it's like to have a really hard vaginal birth. I know what it's like to have 2 C-sections and a child with a stroke and a child with a club foot. I've been through it. I've had HPV. I've had all the gynecology things. And as I joke, the biggest thing then hit 6 years ago when I was 46, because then ovarian cancer came my way. And the minute it struck, I thought, okay, this is one more kind of chink in my armor that's going to help me relate. But by the way, I got it. I've had enough. I don't need to like go through all the things. And so my story is unusual in that we all know the data that 2/3 of women are diagnosed at stage 3 or 4. And that is what I keep saying I really want us to prevent. We're getting better at treating stage 3 or 4, as I'm sure many of you know. We have more treatments and we have better treatments. So we know that longevity has improved, but we have not gotten much better at detecting stage 1 or 2 for so many reasons. And many of the reasons, outside of just lack of a good screening test, is that the knowledge is not there. We are not teaching people with ovaries enough about what their signs and symptoms are. And so that's why I've felt really aggressive about needing to use my voice to teach all of us, all of the women in our lives, because we know that if we've had ovarian cancer, they are at risk for it. Any friend, I think it's really important for us to talk frequently about the signs and symptoms. So my journey was strange because I had had endometriosis for a very long time. Endometriosis rarely can be a precursor to ovarian cancer. And in my case, that's what led to mine. I was having very cyclic, very intense pelvic pain. Many of you know that that's not necessarily the hallmark. The hallmark would be typically more persistent pressure or bloating, more insidious symptoms, and mine were pretty aggressive. And just like I would have done for any patient, I made myself do a pelvic ultrasound in my own office, and my ultrasound tech was amazing and said, I know that you would tell your patients to do an MRI, given that we found a 4 centimeter, what looked like a very complicated, complex mass. We both knew it was probably endometriosis. And I kind of fought with my ultrasound tech and said, I'm not going to go for an MRI. I don't have time. I'm working. And she kind of pushed me. And I said, okay, you know what? I'll do the MRI because I want to be able to put my money where my mouth is. I'm glad that anytime I've gone through something, I can say to my patients, I was anxious too, but look, I did the MRI knowing that it would be fine. And lo and behold, it wasn't fine. It turns out that the radiologist called me pretty much immediately to say, this does not look like typical endometriosis. Even then, I said to him, I think you're wrong. I think it's endometriosis, but I'll get it removed because I'm doubled over in pain. And good thing that we did, because it turned out to be stage 2, which, as many of you know, is something that we can cope with and deal with better with regard to treatments. So I had full hysterectomy staging. I unfortunately had a lot of complications because that's what doctors do. My bladder got perforated, my up and down incision opened. So I had to have about 6 weeks of a wound vac. And all of that, again, taught me and informed me so much, because I think as doctors, if we're not patients, then we really miss the boat on learning how to empathize with anyone who goes through these things. And then I had my 6 cycles of chemo, thought I was going to wear a wig like everyone else, but then realized that I looked ridiculous with a wig. And so I walked around stone cold bald, which also taught me that the minute any of us gets diagnosed with cancer, there are so many messages that get thrown in our way, right? All of a sudden I'd get diagnosed and people were giving me like, here's your wig person, here's the person you're going to use for this. And it helped me understand that we shouldn't do that. We should offer all of our options and resources to anyone going through, but we should remind ourselves that each of us is different. I don't tell any of my patients now going through any chemotherapy, like, this is where you're going to get your wig. I say, here are your choices. You're going to walk around bald, you're going to walk around with a wig, you're going to walk around with a schmata, or you're going to mix it up, and it might be different every single day. And you should do what feels comfortable to you. And you shouldn't worry about what everyone else is doing or worry about how it's making other people feel. For me, walking around bald just felt easier and cleaner and better. So after that whole experience, I really felt like cancer gets a terrible rap. And I say that cautiously, meaning cancer sucks. It is terrible. And yet, I think the vast majority of people, the minute they hear the word cancer, devolve to death and destruction which does not help. It leads to all those cortisol stress responses that are not healthy, and it leads to a lot of avoidance. I think that's why the rhetoric of, ovarian cancer is the silent killer continues. And I think it's really damaging. And I really try to remind people that it is not silent, it is subtle. And if we continue to call it silent, then we essentially are avoiding any ability to try to find it early. And that's not fair to women. Women deserve to know that we can find it earlier. It's not easy and it's not foolproof, but we can do better. So I really try to remind all of my patients and anyone who sees me on social media that fear is never going to be our friend. Fear is going to, again, trigger emotions and cortisol reactions that are not helpful. And fear really leads to avoidance. So I kind of ask all of you, regardless of where you are in your journey, respectfully, that if you can, whenever you use your voice, try to help people understand that, yes, none of us want to get cancer. None of us want to get diagnosed at all, and certainly at later stages, but that our role can be to help them understand to not lead with fear. The vast majority of people who are diagnosed with cancer, in fact, will survive it. That's what the data shows. And so if we could do a better job at not making the mantra be cancer equals death, then we would actually find people far earlier. So that's kind of my cancer experience. When people say like, well, how do you stay so optimistic? How are you so happy? And listen, like I say, like everyone else, there are definitely days where I was not optimistic. There are definitely days right now where I'm an unhappy person at times. I mean, I tend to be a general optimist, but I'm pretty aggressive in my emotions. So anyone who spends time with me knows that time with Shieva is pretty intense, and that's not intensely always good. It's intensely, I like to delve. I like to engage. I like to pick things apart, which can make people crazy. My husband, my children, my family. So I haven't always been happy, but I do think that there are a couple of dictums that I probably always had in my life that I didn't realize that really solidified during my treatment. And so the first one is really that we know this through data, that the expression of gratitude helps so much. And it doesn't just help you feel better in that moment in some kind of nebulous, sweet way. They have really shown that the expression of gratitude and those who are able to express it frequently really do change their cortisol levels. So they're doing all kinds of data, not just with regard to what we think makes sense, but with regard to our hormone status and things like that. So I feel that I was lucky that I kind of was probably born with that type of brain that liked to devolve to gratitude. But through the treatment, I kind of jokingly referred to it as the first thing of the three that I'm going to say that helped me, which is the beauty within the suck. So I feel that we're all going to go through sucky things in our lives. There's no doubt. I have gone through so many sucky things, but that moment where I've had the experience of whatever sucked was the moment where I always felt that it was best to find my gratitude. As I always joke, like it's so easy to find gratitude when you're in a field of abundance, right? Like, oh, Christmas morning, it's so easy to be grateful for like, oh, your food and the gifts and your family, but that's not going to help us. The ability to find gratitude when you are in the depths of despair and depression and anxiety and fear over whatever diagnosis you've had is actually where I think it's going to be most helpful. So anytime I have found myself within the suck, for example, just last week, my husband, who will be fine, just found out he had a GI stromal tumor, which is a cancer that is luckily very treatable. So did it suck? Absolutely. It was in the midst of a lot of things happening at work and life. It was not a convenient time to be diagnosed. And yet I reminded myself immediately that the beauty within this suck is that I am a physician and I understand things better and I can be less anxious in the hospital. And he tends to be a calm individual. And my children are a little bit older. They're not toddlers anymore, like all the things. And it's not a fake toxic positivity, because that is terrible. It is a very true, real, no matter where you are, no matter how bad things are, if you can figure out those nuggets of where you can be grateful and express that gratitude, I know it's helped me. And it, again, data shows it. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that I've tried to remind myself that our lives are so textured and not one person is getting off this earth unscathed. That is just a fact. No matter how much we want to look at someone down the street who's like the skinniest, prettiest, richest, nicest, whatever they are, they have had crap too, whether or not we know it. Every single one of us is going to have it in different varieties. And many times we don't know because people are not honest about what they go through. So I've really tried to remind myself every time I'm embarking on that miscarriage, my child in the NICU with a stroke, the club foot, all the things, I've reminded myself this is one more piece of my journey that is going to lend texture. And I have the opportunity and choice to either feel like a victim Or I had the choice to say, yeah, this sucks. And here's where I can learn from it. Here's where I can help other people. Here's where I can find good things. Every time I've been through these things, I have met so many amazing people. I never would meet T.E.A.L if I hadn't been through this, right? So that's not an easy thing to do because sometimes in the midst of it, you feel like crap. And I want you to honor yourself and allow yourself. I never again want to say, oh, this is amazing. It was so great that I had ovarian cancer. It's not that it was so great. It sucked. And yet it happened. And so once it happened, I had to choose how to deal with it, which leads to the third and frankly, kind of the most important thing to me, which is I have never been a person of religious means. I was born to Persian immigrant parents. If you know anything about Iran, people are mostly Muslim. My grandparents were Muslim, but my parents were very agnostic, kind of, doctors who were socialists. So we grew up in a very liberal household where my father was an atheist, but my mother was very spiritual in her belief of something. She didn't know what. And that's what really rubbed off on me. I know for a fact that from an energetic consciousness perspective, our energy lives on. And again, there is increasing data through quantum science, quantum mechanics, quantum physics, things that I don't understand that prove this. So I have very much benefited from the notion that if I, regardless of a belief in the three religions or an actual God, but I believe in some higher power that I happen to call my God, but some power that helps keep me, my conscience kind of alive. And that reminds me that our bodies are only physical vessels, just like a car. I always say everyone has their car, their vehicle, their physical body is like that. Your physical body might be so amazing that no matter how much abuse has happened to it, either because you have abused it or because life has abused it, it will last for years and years with no damage. On the other hand, some of you may have performed everything correctly, just like with your car. You go into the mechanic, you make sure you get your tune-ups, everything, and yet that vehicle has damage that you're able to fix. And still others have damage that you're not able to fix. But if I look at it in a little bit more of a detached, like this body is merely a vessel, my consciousness is separate. Once this body ultimately no longer functions, and let me hope that it is in my late 80s and early 90s, but that might not be true. But if it is that long, this consciousness will still live on. And if instead it's tomorrow or the next day that this vehicle decides to crap out through no fault of my own and through no fault of anyone else, then again, my consciousness still will live on. And the reason this notion has been so valuable and important to me is, first of all, because it helps me feel less kind of anxious and just that again, I hate the word fear, but fear that I'm going to either leave early or that someone I love is going to leave our physical earth early. When they do leave this physical earth early, instead of being bereft, I can actually truly believe that we will all be together again in some form of energetic afterlife that is so much more magnificent than anything we know right now. And again, like I keep saying, data is starting to show this, whether or not you're religious. So first of all, like I said, it's helped feel less just that fear and anxiety of losing someone, including myself. Second of all, it's actually really helped because I think one of the worst things any of us can do is have the victimization mentality. It's okay to feel sorry for yourself and think, God, this sucks. Everyone else gets to be doing something else. And I'm sitting at home with my wound vacuum and my bald head and everything. But I never once wanted or allowed myself, or even actually, it didn't even naturally occur to me to feel like I was a victim. And I believe it's because of this notion. Because I don't think that there is a God who is afflicting or inflicting harm on any of us. I don't think he's praising or metering out good or bad to us. I think that the God just exists as a level of my conscience. And I think that my energy is going to again move on. And I think that when something happens, it was merely because my physical body wasn't the best physical body, and that's okay. The ability to do that has helped me never feel like, why me? When I hear people say, oh, do you kind of just feel like, why does this crap keep happening to you? I actually never feel that way, because who am I to think that it should happen to anyone else? I don't think that I'm any better than anyone else. I think my behavior is sometimes nice. So I think if it were going to happen to someone, hopefully it wouldn't happen to me. But I've never even had to feel that way because I don't think anyone is afflicting us. And I do think that that notion that there is a higher power who wants to inflict harm is so incredibly damaging. So I kind of implore to anyone who is religious, please believe that your notion of God is a beautiful, kind, gracious God who wants nothing but good and actually has much bigger fish to fry on the other side of our existence. And if you don't believe in a higher power, I would gently nudge you to maybe consider that devoid of religion, you can still believe that our energy will live on. And I have found that to be deeply comforting for myself, or for, again, like I said, the idea that any of my family or children or best friends might not continue to be with us while I'm here. So those are some of the like the nuggets that I've learned. I'm very, 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 again, just standing in humility at being able to be here. And I really, really mean this when I say I am an open book. Anything you want to know about my life as it might pertain to you or help you, I'm willing to talk about openly with regard to so many details. I wish I could be even more open about some of our family's issues, but my family has not always given me permission to be open. I find that being open, even if you're not public, really helps bond women together. Most of us have gone through millions of health or family issues. And if we keep it inside, we think we're alone and we think we're unique in a bad way. But the minute we start talking, we all realize that everyone has gone through things. So again, thank you for being here on a Saturday, and thank you for listening to me, and thank you for listening to me drone on. I really feel like we can do better, and I hope that I can help. And especially, I will say this: I apologize on behalf of the entire medical community because I know for a fact that we have failed women, and that this is the thing that makes me cry. We have failed women on so many levels with regard to how much we inform you of how your body works. We've failed in how we help you diagnose things early. And so I'm sad to say that you still have to be your best advocate. I'm sad to say that even the best of doctors is unfortunately also a victim of the system because our medical system is so broken. Luckily, we can do amazing things in America, but we really need people to understand and be more educated about their own body. And that's what I continue to try to do by educating women about how all of their systems work. So that's it. But thank you. And Pamela and Kirsten, I really appreciate you letting me be a voice here.